Oh, is it this thing, the green thing? Ooh. All right, hi everybody, I'm Matt Titcombe from Peak InfoSec, and this is Fernando Machado, the one and the only. He is. Does that let me go back? There we go. And we're here to talk to you guys today about the CMMC assessment process, really from our perspective as the C3POs. Fernando and I are both C3POs. We've been working together since 2020. Doing all this craziness, and been involved in both conducting assessments. Fernando QA'd our assessment for a client going through a JSVA, and we've QA'd theirs. And so we spent probably way too much time together working through this stuff. So we're just going to jump right in, because we know we're holding you guys all back for your flights and important stuff. So the overall schedule, when we talk about the overall schedule, there's what I need to see. So primarily what's going to happen, once you get a contract with us, about 6 weeks prior to the actual assessment, we're going to want to coordinate everything. We're going to start that scope process, make sure we understand exactly what we signed up for is still what you guys are doing. And that's kind of critical because this also leads into the assessment readiness review. I really want to foot stomp something here for you all. When you guys get into the assessment, the moment we submit something to CMMC EMAS, you need to understand it is now real. DoD now will know everything that happens with your assessment. So you want to make sure before we pass this phase, you are really ready to go forward, because it's potentially downhill from here. So just want to warn everybody, especially on your first time through, a lot of nuance in this.
And just to talk here, basically what Matt is saying, right, once you validate your scope and you tell us what your scope is, our job is then to validate the scope that you told us. Contrary to popular belief, it is not my job to go sifting through your entire environment looking for CUI. You tell us what your scope is, and that is what we're going to validate.
So likewise, about 21 days prior to the assessment, we're going to make sure that assessment plan is finalized. This is now the point in time this is truly real. We have now submitted this to CMMC EMAS in the current regulation. DoD, everything happens, no backing out, no stopping. This is just full game on. We're also at that point in time going to set up the artifact repository. How you guys are going to transfer your evidence to us so we can start your examination and the review of all the content you're providing us.
Yeah, so on the assessment plan, a typical assessment plan, what it'll look like, it'll have a Monday through Friday cadence, and it'll have the different control families on each day. So for example, the way we've done it in the past, Monday we'll start with access control, audit and accountability, identification, authentication. Tuesday we'll do some more control families, Wednesday and Thursday all the way to the end. The purpose for that is so that you have the personnel necessary to be there, so that you don't have somebody like the HR lady sitting around for 3 days doing nothing. You're able to bring these people in to support those portions of the assessment.
Now that being said, C3POs will approach that scheduling slightly differently.
Correct. Yep.
I actually prefer going from access control to identity and authentication because they fit well together. So again, it's kind of everybody's preference. You're going to see a little bit of difference. This is also some of the things when you're talking with the C3POs, ask them how they approach different things. It gives you clues about do they really fit for what you're thinking. So 7 days prior, we are actually starting the examination of your artifacts. We're going to talk about this later on. A lot of times this is stuff we've learned in doing joint surveillance voluntary assessments. You go into a baseline freeze. We don't want to have technical changes being made to your environment. Now, technical changes, when we're talking about this, are not standard operating procedures. You weren't dumb enough to hire Matt, so therefore, if you were, I could still be onboarded. You could still be doing normal patching. Normal stuff that you'd be doing a part of standard operating, please keep doing. We're just talking about, we're going to go stand up a whole brand new component that just changed your baseline. Nah, don't do it.
Yep. And on top of that also, right, it also gives those 7 days prior to that assessment, gives the assessors enough time, that assessment team, to start reviewing through your documentation, start mapping things where they're supposed to be at, policies, procedures, and any other relevant artifacts, as well as work instructions that are added into that.
And please forgive us, we're going to be brain mushed. We are literally coming off of somebody else's assessments. We learned all their documentation. We're trying to flush that out one ear while your stuff's going in the other ear. Please forgive us. We're not going to remember where everything is. So again, we'll talk about that more later on. But this is what's going to be like for us as C3POs as we're going through, helping everybody go through this process a client at a time. Now the assessment weeks, this is typically going to be we're coming on site, or this is going to be virtual. We're now doing the interviews. We're doing the examination and testing of your components. If you've got more than one site, we may be able to get it done in that 1 week, but most times it'll probably flow over into a follow-on week. If you're international and they're scheduling out and we're starting to work through that, it's like, crap, we could be traveling for 2 weeks just between different international sites. And so that all plays into this overall plan, and that really defines your assessment window from start to finish is time we start examination of all your artifacts till we finish on the last site.
Yep, no, nothing else to add to that.
And then the last thing we do is we'll conduct a final out brief. This will let you know what your results are. All of us, we all try and make sure as we're going through this process every day, you have a lot of cognizance and understanding where we're saying at this point in time, your trending is not met for an assessment objective and requirement. We want everyone to be as aware as you can and have opportunities to do documentation, adjustments, things like that, and also clarify to us. We understand communications are going to happen. We're all humans. The telephone game happens, and we're not going to understand something you're saying. We want you to have an opportunity to make sure, again, not changing your baseline, but that you can actually meet the intent of the requirements.
Yep, and one of the good things about it, if you guys haven't had a chance to read in the final rule now, I keep saying proposed rule, in the final rule, it actually now allows controls that were marked as initially as marked as not met to be reevaluated during the course of your assessment and up to 10 business days after, right? Provided that there's 3 criteria in place. I think the first one is regarding it can't have a material effect on other controls, right? That you're going to provide additional clarification. And the last one, which I don't know why they put it in there, but it has to be submitted to us prior to us submitting our final assessment report, which I don't think we would ever submit a final assessment report before that anyway.
And a lot of times they put this in because you need to update your SSP. A lot of these changes probably go into there. Properly done, people, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, follow your change and control processes, get it signed, get it approved, go through normal. It's why they've added that window so you can get it done right and not screw it up because you're trying to go too fast.
Correct.
And then the last thing is there is the appeals time. So if you have any appeals and complaints, you basically have up to 20 days after that final out brief to submit any appeals or complaints to us as the authorized C3PO, and that would be kind of underneath DIBCAC, they called this a reclama. Again, it's going to be errors, malfeasance, or unethical conduct are valid reasons.
Correct.
Okay. So when we're looking at this, please remember this is coming out of 800-171 Alpha, which is your Bible when it comes down to this. We live and breathe in 171 Alpha, 171, and now as we get into this, we will also have 32 CFR Part 170 open during the entire assessment too, because it's going to come up. But when we're coming in as assessors, when you're going to SPRS and you're submitting your entry, you're basically doing a basic assessment because you're evaluating yourself at the 110 requirements. You should be doing it at the 320, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But we come in, we are by default must evaluate at 320. We're not going to pick every item out of your inventory and test it. We're not going to test every human. We're not going to go physically potentially test every facility. We're picking a sample. Now, the more we see problems with the sample, the more we're likely to test. If you have a sample we pull and it's got a configuration item problem, it's going to happen, it's okay. We may pull another sample and make sure that out of a set of those Windows PCs, yeah, that one's just having a problem. And so we're going to pull a check on some of your stuff. So we remember this, please remember this one. This is literally the crap rolls uphill slide. We are coming in to assess you at the 320 assessment objectives. That is done against every system component you've identified in scope. Your notice and consent banner should be applied to all components that can have it applied to, and we are literally going to look to make sure that you have got all of that being applied or written off as non-applicable at the component level. It does happen, it's perfectly fine. And then unfortunately, the reality will be if you've got one component that's not met, that assessment objective is not met. And then the requirement is not met. So please, document your baseline, document the security controls, and make sure you're applying everything in scope and cover everything. Don't get Active Directory tunnel vision, please. I see that all the time.
All the time.
Whoop. Go ahead, sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Yep.
Ready?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so where are we coming from? So this is pulled out of the draft CMMC assessment procedure, and you'll kind of see this, it's likely to carry forward in the updated one, is that we're expected to employ test, evaluation, and examination of all of your artifacts. It's up to us as the assessing organization to determine the level we need from you and also that how far we have to go. So it's flexibility on our side. Yep. You really do want to shock and awe us. The more you tell us, the better you are. Now, unfortunately, what's also going on in the background is we don't trust you. I'm sorry. The reality is we have to validate your story. Yep. And that's what we're here for. And so no matter how much we like you, no matter how much we really want to help you, trust me, our hardest problem is actually keeping our mouth shut from not giving you advice. We also can't trust everything you're saying. And that's going to get you guys annoyed and irritated with us as we go forward with this. And then also, as we're doing this, we're going to keep going back to, can you show me? Can you demonstrate? But I gave you that as evidence. Well, I actually need to see it in truth and see you do it. Now, this brings us into the 7 stages of grief. I think everybody here is in different stages at different times, to include everybody up on the stage. You will go through this during an assessment, invariably. You will be angry at us. You will be in denial of the fact that we found something. You'll be bargaining with us. Please, this has got to be right. You don't understand my boss. He's going to be mad at me. It's all going to happen. It's okay. We get that. We're going through it on our side too, because we're worried about all this too and making sure this works for you guys too.
Yep.
So please understand, emotions are going to come up in this, and it's going to be all right. Now, as we get into this, how do we assess? This is critical. This is right out of 171 alpha. We assess straight from looking at 171 alpha, and we're really looking at the verbs. In this case, we're going to pick an easy one, notice and consent banner. We're looking to see where you have identified to us what the language, which you see highlighted here, for what that should be. And this is our organization-defined parameter for peak InfoSec of what our notice and consent banner should be. Great. That's what I want to see as an assessor of how you've set your environment up and what it has been to be built as. Then when we get to interviews, you're going to talk to us, and then I'm going to bring up my configuration. Well, Mr. Machado, this is the way we've set up Azure branding. And this is the way it's organized and set up. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Again, now we've gone from the way it should be, and now we're into system configuration and settings and design documentation. All this is fitting together in that interview process. Next step is, can you show me the way it works? Well, we're probably going to see this pop up quite a bit. This is our notice and consent banner language. And so this is the way Mr. Machado, as the assessor for us, would actually see this. And many times, we're going to see this passively. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to do like MFA. We may see it so much before we even get to 353, we're fine. We don't even need to talk about it. Yep. And the further we get on in your assessment, there's a lot of things that pop up. Oh yeah, we saw that when you covered this. Yep. Now, there was a disconnect I showed you. I showed you this one, and that language matched that. So there was a disconnect way back on that first slide, because that other one I gave you was our original notice and consent banner for our networking infrastructure that couldn't do all the special stuff you can do in Azure. Wait a minute. That would be a not met. What I told you versus what we configured versus what is didn't match. Here's the thing. Humans, between your brains, you guys are incredible recognition engines. Assessors, we're probably a little exceptional at that. We're very good at spotting these disconnects. So have somebody else check your work and make sure that you're not giving disconnects in the evidence and stuff you're providing, or you've provided screenshots that cover all. Now, here's the reality. Fernando and I, we're toddlers. You want to treat us as toddlers. You do not let toddlers wander amok in your house. You don't let toddlers go into your kitchen unsupervised when the oven's on, do you? No. You don't let assessors wander amok through your business. You don't let assessors wander amok through your evidence. You need to hold our hand. Really. Hint, hint. Please. You want to hold our hand. It's also cheaper too. Now, in that leaving us alone to figure out, point us to, when you're writing your SSP and your documentation, point us to where we need to go look. We will not find it if you don't point it to us. And we're going to waste a lot of time then asking clarifications. So please tell us where to go find things in the paragraph number and right there in this version. Make it easier on us, and you'll make us happy too. Mm-hmm. Rule 2, use a traceability matrix, whether that's in your SSP or a separate document, or you're using future feed to map content together. The GRC tools all do this great. Guide us through all the components and how they all fit together in what you're presenting to us. I don't recommend embedding every detail of everything in your SSP. That's a kitchen sink model. It makes it really brittle, and we will invariably find problems in that model. Yep. So not a recommendation. It's funny. That's if you actually read the NIST discussion around SSPs, they don't even recommend that as the best practice. So please use pointers to everything else that you've got in your content. Number 3, control the conversation. This is probably the most important thing you can do, and you'll see it when we get into this in a minute in the modeling of this. I want you guys to think of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. There we go. There's my Cowboys fan. And so as a part of that, Joe Buck calls the play. He's the straight guy. Troy Aikman's the color guy. You need to do the same thing. You need to have somebody there to tell us this is why it's met. And your color guy is your IT guy, your MSP, whoever's there, they're ready to show the configuration and the settings and demonstrate it. Be ready to lead in with that. Control the conversation with us. And when we're working on writing something up, put us on mute. We got what's going on. And then say, okay, we're coming into this. Let's get this ready. Let's get this up and control it. Please use it to your advantage. And then lastly, almost, maximize that opportunity with examination. If you guys tell us your story properly, there are things that we're going to be able to find. We can just sign off on examination only, and we're going to be good. Now, there's going to be a lot. We're going to need clarifications and understanding about what you're doing. So we will have to look at interviews and tests. And because a lot of the requirements require us to make sure what you've told us is implementing as designed and as expected. That's actually the definition of an assessment. Now, this is a traceability matrix that we used when we went through our original assessment. It's just kind of a sample. Here's the requirement: policies, plans, procedures, configuration items, etc. Fernando, you want to explain yours?
Yeah, so when we started going through our DIDCAC assessment, our assessment lasted about 2 days. And the reason why is we created this OneNote document that we give away for free on our website. And all it is it's a poor man's way of organizing all of your artifacts. So we sent them all of the screenshots of all the configuration items to the DIDCAC team ahead of time, so that by the time they reviewed it and they came to do our assessment, they already knew what they were walking into.
Mm-hmm. So the more you can give us to understand the way your environment is, the better off you are. Again, future feed and other tools. Now the thing is, what you need to understand on the background of this is actually a screenshot we use in our gap assessments. We're filling this in during that gap assessment. We're typing in Prior to this, everything we had examination. What documents did we examine? What were our comments on those examination? What were our questions we want to ask you out of that? Then we're following up. I've got a document. I actually talked to Mr. Machado. I got to track who I'm interviewing, so we got to track that. Wait, I asked Mr. Machado a question. Did Fernando answer? Okay, Fernando said this. I've got to track that as an assessor.
Yep.
And if I tested some of his components, I've got to track which component I tested. I've got to track the results of that test. This is stuff that we have to do as an ISO 1720 organization in case we have to provide evidence that we actually did our job right. And Steve, and I've forgotten his last name from the Cyber ABs, hopefully in here maybe, he's the one that can be checking up on us to make sure we're doing this right. Actually, I think he's sitting maybe right there. I don't know, I can't see because of the bright lights. So this is the stuff we're doing in the background. So when we're saying, hey, I'm writing this up.
Shut up, fool!
Don't talk. Literally, shut up. How many C3POs in the room have had an OSC say things they shouldn't have said? Just go ahead and tell us. How many? Come on.
Matter of fact, perfect example of that. We just had a joint surveillance assessment recently where what they had documented in their system security plan was one thing, and as the assessor started to ask questions, they discovered there was a separate site with more CUI in it. The entire assessment went downhill from there.
So a lot of times when you're in an assessment, remember, you got those emotions going on. You're afraid we're not going to get it. That's one of the very first things that comes up. Matt stopped, and Matt said he's ready, but I don't think Matt really heard, so I'm going to go and make sure I go ahead and tell Matt more. You know what we have to do? We have to stop typing. Now we have to listen. You've now let fear run you. Bad things happen then. People say bad things, to Fernando's point. And invariably, there's also somebody typically in your room that's got to show they're smarter than us. We really don't, we're not there trying to look smart. We're just trying to understand how you're doing this. Did you build what you told us you were going to build, and is it compliant? Yeah, that becomes the next problem child.
Always.
So please, you have a mute button. If we're not physically on site, use the mute button and wait until we're ready to move on to the next assessment objective.
Yeah, there's always that one person that wants to show off how smart they are and how smarter they are than the assessors. If you're not laughing, it's probably you. However, if that person is in your organization, PTO might be a good time.
All right, so now we're going to actually get through a demo. We're actually going to walk through 311. And Mr. Machado.
I shall play the contractor.
I shall play the evil assessor. Ha ha ha. Oh, yes, you get this.
Yep.
There you go. So we're going to walk through this. So primarily what I've highlighted here are the key things that we're looking at from an evidentiary point of view. What I'm looking for is evidence and then eventually a test for how Mr. Machado has set up cybersecurity investments on how they limit and authorize access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized devices, etc. And we will get into that right now. So, Mr. Machado, can you explain to me your procedure for authorizing users for access to your environment?
Yes, sir. So we have an onboarding checklist. And on that onboarding checklist, we have various items that are prerequisite to system access that include things like undergoing a favorable background check and completing required training such as cybersecurity awareness training, insider threat awareness training, unauthorized disclosure of CUI training, and the DoD's mandatory CUI training. Once that's completed, depending on the user's role, if they're going to be requesting a general user account, we will have them fill out the information system request form as a general user. If they're going to have privileged access, on top of that, they will be filling out the privileged user information account request form.
So, Mr. Machado, I saw in your notes that that's the same procedure used for authorizing privileged users?
They're two separate procedures.
Okay, so they're parallel, so they kind of run, okay.
Correct.
So, but again, you're making sure that everybody's completed their background screening and training is completed before you're authorizing their account.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just a second, please. All right, moving on to Bravo, Mr. Machado. I see in your SSP that you don't have any processes acting on behalf of authorized users. You call those a POW, don't you?
Correct. Well, we don't have traditional processes acting on behalf of authorized users in the sense of things like automated scripts or service accounts. Services like Azure Active Directory do not run on behalf of authorized users since it runs in the operating system in the system context.
Okay, so you don't have anything, it's a little bit weird when we run into this, so normally I got to dig it. So again, I didn't see anything in your scoping, you're not using Druva or AvePoint for backups where they're low services, so again, everything, just making sure I don't have a misconnect, everything's in GCC high. And
that is correct.
Okay.
Everything is in GCC high.
And so you're really inheriting their service accounts in the background, they're managing that.
Correct.
Okay, all right. A little bit weird, let me write that up, but again, I'm fine with that being non-applicable based upon your environment. All right, so Mr. Machado, can you describe how you authorize devices to be used in your environment?
Right, so devices added to the system must go through our change request process, and once those devices are approved through our change control board, they are then added to our hardware software inventory.
Okay. And so again, you've got an authorized list. Yep, it's in here. I see the list of all the devices you've got already.
Yes, sir.
So can you explain to me then how you limit access? How are you actually limiting that access to the authorized user? You hired Matt Ed, made a really bad decision, but how do you limit that access?
Well, I was going to show you the
please.
onboarding checklist.
Oh, perfect, yes.
Yep, so here we've got the onboarding checklist that we at CyberSec use, and here you could see that part of that checklist includes that IS account request form. And here is our list of non-privileged users, and we recently hired Mr. Alex Hartford to be our employee.
Okay, so this is a recent one.
This is a recent one.
Oh, perfect, even better.
Yep, and so here's Mr. Hartford's profile, and you could see that not only does he have his cybersecurity awareness various trainings here, but there is his completed IS account request form. Here's his form where he is requesting a new account as a general user with no administrative access into our GCC High environment. It was then sent off to me for review on approval.
Okay.
And then that was sent over to our IT department for account creation.
Perfect, that looks really great.
And one last thing.
Oh, please.
Yep, and one last thing also, here is the completed cybersecurity requirement training certificates that he was supposed to have.
Great. Let me just pause for a moment. I got to write that up, and I want to jump to, while you've got that up, I'm going to go ahead and capture that for 3.9, because that helps me, I'm sorry, 3.3.2, that you're covering that for training. Perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. So, again, just verifying you don't have any service accounts, so that will take care of Echo. That'll be not applicable because Bravo's non-applicable. Okay, I'm good with that. So when we talk about how you authorize devices, how do you limit access to devices? So can anybody use their device and plug in and get access to your environment?
Negative. They're all Entra ID joined or Azure AD joined, depending on the day.
Okay.
But here you can see the change request. Here's our change request form. We recently added CSI Laptop 8 to the environment. It went to our change control board, which reviewed and approved it on October 31st.
Okay, and I saw in there that you're using Intune.
Correct.
So are you using conditional access policies then?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Could you show those to me?
Yep. So I'll start with the.
Please.
Yep. So here we're starting with how we're limiting access to authorized users. Here you see Mr. Hartford's account that was approved by us earlier. And he requested a general user account with no administrative access. And here you can see Mr. Hartford has no administrator access. This is a general user account.
Okay, great. All right, and then you issued him a device, right?
We did issue him a device.
Okay.
I'll get to that. And then over here, this account in here is a privileged account that was created prior to establishing the CUI environment.
Okay, and I saw that in your baseline, that you had the letter in there for everything as of that date. That was where you established the baseline for everything prior to that date was inherited from that. Okay, that's good. I'm good with that. That'll help us in 3.4.
And the way we limit authorized devices are added, they're Entra ID joined. And so here you could see that CSI Laptop 8, and you can see right there on the top right is Microsoft Entra ID joined. and it was joined on the same exact day that we approved the configuration change request.
Wow, that was very effective. That was fast. It's a lot of times we don't see it done quite that fast. Very good.
And on top of that, not only did we join it, we have these conditional access policies
Thank
that we
you.
talked about.
So can I grab a screenshot of that?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Okay, can you explain one of these? Which one is protecting that, making sure any device can't log in?
Correct. So right here, one of the conditions to access our environment is that the device has to meet compliance requirements. And here you can see that on the bottom left, we've enabled the policy, and the condition is it will grant access if that device is marked as compliant.
So what do you mean marked as compliant? How does that enforced in your environment?
We typically have different things in place, such as enforcing MFA for all users and blocking authentication, legacy authentication methods. And there's a various list of other things that we have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think that covers it for me for limiting access to authorized devices. Just going through, I don't see anything as trending as not met for 311. And that's the way it goes. Sounds easy. You can see there's a lot of prep that goes in. And, even for us, we've been doing this. We kind of know the flow of what we're looking at. Feel free, because he also came back in and embellished and told a stronger, richer story beyond even what I was asking for, showing the certificates. Oh, you've already pre-answered for me when I get to awareness and training. You already told me in your onboarding process you're already doing background screening checks. I'm hearing things about the way the entire environment operates, even in 311. So this is what an assessment objective is like. It's stressful. Please do not underestimate the stress. But if you're ready to tell the story of the way you've set it up, the way it should be, the way you've configured it, and your evidence of it is that way, you'll be great. Just cover all your components.
Yep. You guys will notice the theme, right? The theme in all of the assessment objectives is document it and then implement and do what you say you documented. It is literally that simple. I mean, obviously some environments are a little bit more complex than others, but show us what you documented and then show us that you're actually doing it.
So at that point in time, we're actually going to open this up for Ask a C3PO Anything.